My name is Eleanor Whitmore, and on Christmas Eve, I learned what it feels like to be both the shame and the headline of a family in a single breath. The ham was still steaming when my daughter-in-law set down the gravy boat like a gavel. "You're an embarrassment, Ellie," she said, loud enough to slice through carols and clatter. Across the table, my son stared at his plate, the polished fork in his hand catching the tree lights like a lie he didn't want to see. I had spent the day in my small kitchen, the one that still smells of bourbon-soaked vanilla and orange peel when the oven cools. Lily, my granddaughter, had filmed me piping frosting onto cookies, as if steady hands could argue with time. I told myself the video was silly and sweet and mostly for her. I told myself many things to keep from answering Melissa's words with the truth that burned behind my teeth. The phone on the table began to buzz. Andrew picked it up, relief blooming on his face as if any interruption might save him from choosing sides. "Yes, sir," he said, standing. He listened, blinked, then turned toward me with the stiff smile of a man whose world had tilted. They're running a New Year's feature," he managed. "Forbes, Mom, you're on the cover." The room went quiet enough to hear the clock in the hallway count out the moment. Melissa's mouth opened, then closed. Lily's eyes shone like she'd known all along. My own hands, still dusted with sugar, trembled over the tablecloth my husband and I bought the first year we could afford new things. I stared at them and felt something inside me steady, like a pilot light catching. I did not argue. I folded my napkin, lifted my chin, and let the silence rearrange the seating chart of our family. The door to the past had not closed, but another one had opened, and I could smell vanilla on the threshold. When the last of the dishes were scraped into the sink that night, I stood in the quiet kitchen with only the hum of the refrigerator for company. My hands still smelled faintly of orange peel and vanilla, the same scents Melissa had mocked only hours before. I should have been angry, but mostly I felt hollow. I kept seeing Andrew's eyes fixed on his plate, his silence as sharp as any insult. A mother raises a son expecting that when the world cuts deep, he will at least glance up to check if she's bleeding. Mine didn't. I sank into the old rocker by the window, the one Harold used to claim when his back ached after mowing the lawn. Outside, snow clung to the shrubs, muffling the street. Lily crept in and curled up on the rug with her phone glowing against her face. She grinned. "Grandma? They love you?" She tilted the screen so I could see comments pouring in beneath the video she had posted that morning. Strangers were writing about how they wished they had a grandmother like me, how the way I folded dough reminded them of home. Some even begged for recipes. At first, I thought it was sweet nonsense. Teenagers type those things all the time, but the numbers kept rising, hundreds of thousands of views turning into millions overnight. The notifications blinked so fast the phone might have caught fire. I laughed nervously and told her to turn it off before the neighbors thought we were running a nightclub. Still, when I tried to sleep later, the words lingered like whispers through the walls. Embarrassment, Forbes, Grandma's kitchen. The contrast was dizzying. The next morning, I brewed coffee in the chipped blue pot I've had for 30 years and sat at the counter with my notebook. I've kept journals since college, though most pages are filled with grocery lists and reminders to call the dentist. That day, I wrote, "People want stories, not just recipes. They want to remember their own kitchens through mine." By noon, the local paper had emailed Lily asking for an interview. She squealed and jumped onto the couch while I clutched the backrest to steady myself. Me? On the news? It felt absurd. I hadn't been further than the farmer's market in months. Still, the reporter showed up with a camera crew, capturing flour floating in the sunlit air of my small kitchen. I caught my reflection in the window, cheeks pink, Hair stubbornly silver, hands busy kneading like they had every Christmas since 1974. For the first time in years, I looked alive. But with every knock at the door and ping of the phone, a knot tightened in my stomach. Melissa's voice echoed whenever I set out a tray of cookies. "You're an embarrassment." I wondered if the whole world praising me would only harden her contempt. And Andrew? He texted nothing. Not congratulations. Not even a curious emoji. My son was a ghost inside my own house, even while sitting across from me at dinner. That silence hurt more than any insult. It told me I was stepping onto a road where I could not count on him to follow. I looked at Lily, wide-eyed and eager, and realized that if I walked it at all, I would be walking for her, and perhaps for every young person aching to remember where they came from. The week between Christmas and New Year's blurred into a storm of attention I had never invited. Reporters left voicemails, producers emailed, bloggers tagged me in articles with headlines that made me blush. My small kitchen turned into a stage, every wooden spoon and ceramic bowl a prop under the sudden spotlight. I tried to keep life normal, feeding the cat, shoveling snow from the steps, but the phone wouldn't stop buzzing. At the grocery store, a young woman stopped me by the display of oranges. "Are you the cookie lady from TikTok?" she asked, her breath visible in the cold aisle. Before I could answer, she hugged me, whispering that my video had reminded her of her late mother's hands. I stood there, stunned, while people wheeled carts around us. When I finally got home, I cried into the sleeves of my cardigan, not from sadness, but from the strange weight of being recognized. Melissa's face, however, grew tighter each day. At family dinner, she kept her smile polite but stiff, as if the cameras outside were paparazzi she had to tolerate. She didn't mock me again, but her silence felt like another form of dismissal. Andrew, still wordless, checked his phone more than he looked at me. Lily tried to fill the gaps with chatter, her excitement spilling out in stories about classmates replaying my video during lunch. I stayed up late scrolling through comments I pretended not to care about. Some were silly, requests for cookie tutorials, questions about my secret spice blend, but others pierced deeper. Strangers confessed that they watched my video before bed because it made them feel safe, the way their grandmother's kitchens once had. Reading those words, I realized this was no longer about cookies. It was about a hunger people carried for connection and heritage. One evening, as snow tapped softly against the windows, I sat with Lily at the dining table. "Grandma," she said, "people don't just want recipes. They want you. They want to learn." Her eyes were bright with the kind of certainty only teenagers possess, but something in me knew she was right. For years, I had believed my value shrank with age, each wrinkle a tally of irrelevance. Yet here were thousands, maybe millions, telling me otherwise. That night, I barely slept. The house creaked with winter air while I turned over an idea in my mind. What if there was a way to bring people like me, retired, overlooked, still carrying entire worlds of knowledge, together with people like Lily's classmates who longed to learn? The thought made my heart beat faster than any caffeine. By dawn, I had scribbled enough notes to fill 3 pages. The words weren't polished, but they pulsed with possibility, a bridge between generations, a hearth that never goes cold. I set the notebook down beside my coffee cup, steam curling like a promise. For the first time in decades, I felt the morning was waiting for me. The first person I confided in was Daniel Harper, the young man who lived 2 houses down. He had lost his job in a round of tech layoffs and spent his afternoons jogging past my porch with earbuds in. One morning, I stopped him as he slowed near the mailbox and asked if he might take a look at my notes. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, skimmed the pages, and smiled in a way that made me believe he actually saw me. "This is brilliant," he said. "Think of it as Airbnb meets a community center. People sign up to learn skills from elders. You're the perfect face of it." I laughed at the grandiosity, but his excitement was contagious. Within a week, we were sketching wireframes at my dining room table, laptops open between plates of cookies. Lily joined us, filming snippets and suggesting names. It was she who proposed Hearthbridge, a place where warmth and connection crossed generations. The name stuck like dough on a spoon. Our first test came through the local church. I asked Pastor Ray if we might borrow the fellowship hall one Saturday to host a heritage workshop. He raised his eyebrows, then agreed with the kind patience he'd always shown me. That weekend, I taught half a dozen college students how to roll pie crust without tearing it. In another corner, Mrs. Garcia from across the street demonstrated quilting stitches. The kids listened, clumsy but eager, and when it ended, they hugged us like family. The success of that small gathering rippled quickly. The community center called, asking if we could organize a weekly series. Flyers went up at the library, and suddenly we had waiting lists. Daniel built a simple website where people could register, and within days, strangers from neighboring towns were signing up. My kitchen became the unofficial headquarters, laptops and recipe cards stacked beside the mixer. Still, I hesitated to believe it could last. I had lived long enough to see fads flare and fade, yet each time a young face lit up while tasting bread, they had kneaded themselves. I felt something more enduring. It wasn't about novelty. It was about belonging. Then came the email from Julia Clark, a venture capitalist whose name I only knew from magazine profiles. She had seen a clip of our workshop circulating online and wanted to meet. My instinct was to decline. Venture capital sounded like shark-infested waters. But Daniel insisted, "This is how we make Hearthbridge bigger than just our neighborhood," he said. So I ironed my best blouse, packed Lily's cookies in a tin, and drove with Daniel to a sleek office downtown. Julia greeted us with a firm handshake and eyes sharp as glass. She listened as I explained Hearthbridge, my voice trembling until Daniel's steady nod anchored me. When I finished, she leaned back, tapped her pen, and said, "Mrs. Whitmore, you may have just described the future of community learning." Her words echoed in my chest long after we left. For the first time, the dream felt real. By the time February arrived, my calendar was fuller than it had been in years. Julia Clark had introduced us to a small circle of investors, and against every instinct that told me I was in over my head, I sat at long conference tables describing Hearthbridge as if it were my classroom, and they were restless children waiting for a lesson. To my shock, they leaned in. They asked questions. They nodded. And eventually, they signed checks. We didn't raise millions, just enough to cover development, hire a designer, and rent a modest office space above the hardware store on Main Street. But to me, it felt like inheriting a fortune. I bought Daniel a new laptop, stocked the office with coffee beans, and pinned Lily's sketches of logos on the wall. When I stood in that small, sunlit room, I felt a kind of pride I hadn't known since watching Andrew take his first steps. The press, however, latched onto the story with a hunger that startled me. Grandmother of the internet age. One headline called me. Another dubbed Hearthbridge, the antidote to generational loneliness. I smiled at the praise. But late at night, I sat on my porch and wondered if I was building a sandcastle too close to the tide. Andrew barely spoke to me. He avoided eye contact during Sunday dinners, and when I mentioned Hearthbridge, he excused himself to answer imaginary phone calls. Melissa's disapproval simmered like a covered pot, though she was careful not to spill it in front of reporters. Only Lily glowed with unfiltered pride, skipping into the office after school, eager to file recipes into our growing digital library. Then Forbes called. They wanted to feature Hearthbridge in their New Year's issue. with me on the cover. I nearly dropped the phone into the mixing bowl. Me, on the same glossy pages as CEOs and moguls. I laughed nervously, then cried, then laughed again until Lily hugged me and whispered, "I told you, Grandma." Zhao, the photo shoot took place in my kitchen, flour dust dancing in the sunlight while I pretended not to notice the cameras. The photographer asked me to hold up a tray of cookies, but I insisted on the notebook instead, the same one with flour smudges from the night I first scribbled "Bridge Between Generations." When the issue finally landed on newsstands, neighbors brought copies to my porch as if it were a birth announcement. Still, beneath the joy lay a sliver of dread. I knew from years in the classroom that the higher the pedestal, the harder the fall. Hearthbridge was growing faster than I could catch my breath, and with growth came whispers of competition. Daniel tried to reassure me, promising our technology was strong, our community loyal. But even as I smiled for cameras, I couldn't shake the unease that someone, somewhere, was waiting to knock us down. And soon enough, they did. It began with a glossy television ad during Sunday night football. A smooth baritone voice promised a groundbreaking way to connect the wisdom of elders with the curiosity of the young. The screen filled with cheerful gray-haired instructors guiding eager college kids through sewing, baking, woodworking, the colors, the tagline, even the rhythm of the video. It all looked alarmingly familiar. Then the logo appeared, Everett Solutions. Their platform was called Wisdom Link. I felt my chest tighten. They hadn't just borrowed our concept, they had mirrored it almost pixel for pixel. Daniel called within minutes. "Ellie, did you see that? It's Hearthbridge in a new suit." By Monday morning, our inbox overflowed. Longtime supporters wrote asking if we had sold the company. Others accused us of cashing out, furious that we had handed the idea to a corporation. Confusion spread faster than the truth. Daniel and I sat hunched over the office desk, the phones buzzing nonstop. He buried his head in his hands. "They've got money we can't compete with," he muttered. "Billboards, national TV spots. They'll drown us before we can breathe." I wanted to argue, but the truth was already looming outside our window. A massive Everett Solutions banner had gone up downtown overnight. Their slogan splashed across the skyline like a verdict. And then, as if imitation weren't insult enough, a letter arrived from a law firm in New York, a cease and desist order accusing us of copying them. The absurdity knocked the air from my lungs. They were trying to erase us by rewriting the story, claiming first rights to an idea born in my flour-dusted kitchen. Still, none of it compared to the wound I received a week later. My former student, now a paralegal, emailed me a press release she thought I should see. There, under Everett's corporate masthead, was Andrew's name, Senior Strategic Consultant. I reread the words until the lines blurred. My own son. The boy who used to stand on a chair beside me licking batter from spoons was now lending his talent to the very company trying to crush me. When I confronted him in the driveway, his shoulders squared as though he'd expected it. "Mom, it's business," he said flatly. "Everett can scale this idea worldwide. They have resources you'll never touch. You should consider partnering instead of fighting. I can help make that happen." His tone was clinical, not cruel, but it sliced deeper than any insult. I saw in his eyes not malice but calculation, as if he were explaining quarterly profits instead of betrayal. My heart stung with both fury and grief. That night, I wandered the dark house, unable to settle. The wind rattled the windows, echoing the storm inside me. I imagined shuddering Hearthbridge, admitting defeat before the juggernaut. I pictured Andrew climbing the corporate ladder while reporters forgot my name. The thought left me hollow. Sometime after midnight, I found Lily in the kitchen sipping milk from a mug, her hair a tumble of sleep. She slid onto the stool and studied my face. "Grandma, you always say the secret ingredient is love," she whispered. "They can't steal that." Her words landed like a match in cold ashes. She was right. Everett could mimic our website, steal our designs, even bribe my own son, but they could never counterfeit the stories baked into each crust. The tenderness passed hand to hand, the memories stitched into every recipe card. They could copy the mechanics, but not the soul. And with that realization, my despair hardened into resolve. If they wanted to fight, I would give them a battle, but on ground they couldn't purchase. I would show the world the difference between imitation and authenticity. I would defend Hearthbridge not with lawyers' letters alone, but with the living proof of a community that no corporation could fabricate. The plan was already forming. The plan began simply, scribbled again in that same battered notebook. If Everett wanted the technology, I would let them have the skeleton. But the flesh, the heartbeat, the laughter, those would remain with us. I called Daniel and Lily into the kitchen one snowy afternoon and explained it over steaming mugs of cocoa. "We'll give away the basics," I said. "Recipes, instructions, even some videos. Let them copy every line of it. But the real treasure will be the stories, the face-to-face gatherings, the connection you can only feel in a living room or a church basement. That's what they'll never own." Daniel leaned back, a slow grin spreading across his face. "A Trojan horse," he murmured. "Smart." Lily clapped, spilling cocoa on her pajamas, and shouted, "Grandma's gonna win with love." We launched a campaign called Hearth at Home. Every registered user could download lessons for free, but the invitation was clear. Come sit at the table, hear the stories, break bread with us. Community centers, libraries, even fire halls opened their doors. Photos flooded social media of elders and teens, side by side, flour on their noses, laughter in their throats. The movement spread faster than Everett's glossy ads, because it was real. Still, Everett's lawyers pressed forward, and the court hearings loomed. I dreaded those days. The stale air of legal chambers, the way their attorneys spoke my name like a nuisance. Yet each time I returned home, there were new letters waiting, handwritten notes from strangers thanking me for giving them back a piece of their childhood. One woman mailed a photo of her teenage son baking bread with his grandfather for the first time. I taped it to the fridge and stared at it whenever doubt crept in. The showdown came not in court, but in my own kitchen. Forbes had sent a journalist to capture a day in the life of Hearthbridge. As cameras rolled, the CEO of Everett Solutions arrived unannounced with a small entourage. He expected intimidation. I offered him tea. While the journalist watched, he spoke of settlements, of licensing agreements, of inevitable corporate dominance. I listened, stirring sugar into the mug, then set it gently before him. "You can buy designs," I told him, "but you cannot purchase memory. You can't patent the way a granddaughter looks at her grandmother when she learns how to fold pie crust. That's what Hearthbridge is. And that's what you'll never duplicate." Silence filled the kitchen, the kind that doesn't come from microphones or lights, but from truth settling into the walls. The CEO shifted in his chair, unable to meet my eyes. The journalist scribbled furiously, capturing every word. Within weeks, Everett announced a strategic restructuring. They withdrew their lawsuit and shuttered WisdomLink, citing market misalignment. I knew the real reason. Without a soul, their machine had no breath. Andrew lost his consulting contract in the collapse. One evening, he appeared on my porch, shoulders slumped, snow clinging to his coat. "Mom," he whispered. "I was wrong. I forgot what mattered." His voice cracked. "Can you forgive me?" I didn't answer right away. Forgiveness is not a switch. It is a door slowly opened. but I invited him inside, sat him at the table, and handed him a rolling pin. "Start here," I said. As the dough flattened beneath his hands, I felt the fracture in my heart begin, at last, to knit. And that was the true victory, not Forbes, not headlines, not even survival against Everett. It was reclaiming the hearth of my own family. It was proving that revenge, in the end, is not about striking back. It is about building forward. The best revenge, I realized, is getting ahead and bringing those you love with you. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.